There is nothing scarier than betrayal, especially of the closest and dearest people. But unfortunately, it happens quite often. My family, in which I invested a lot of time and effort, which I loved and supported in every possible way, turned away from me at one point and I was left alone, completely broken. My name is Wallace Banks. I was once married to a wonderful woman named Marion. We lived happily together for what I believe to be 24 years, though in reality it was only 21. One day she decided to end our marriage. It turns out she had found someone else, a man named James Paxson, and they had been falling in love for 3 years, with a passionate affair. I'm an adult man. If she didn't want to stay with me, then so be it. It hurt. It hurt a lot. But life goes on. The real sting of betrayal came when I discovered that my 3 children, Jason, Michael, and Macy, all knew about the affair and their mother's plan to leave me. They didn't want to be in the middle of it, so they kept me in the dark. Essentially, they took their mother's side. Bitter doesn't even begin to describe my feelings, but I bought a boat and went sailing. Occasionally, I did some charter work, but mostly I just drifted around. This continued for 7 years. Then my daughter Macy called. Her mom needed a favor. She had a new little girl named Karen and wanted me to be tested to see if I could be a kidney match. It didn't take a genius to grasp the implications, and my sons, doubting my mental capabilities, came to explain that yes, my wife had been pregnant and I was the father when she left. I felt ashamed because they had known this all along. How do you handle something like that being dropped on you? As for me, I decided to take a trip to Bermuda. I was getting ready to leave when Marion appeared. I had already pulled up the anchor and was drifting away from the pier when she ran and jumped onto the boat. It was about 7 feet from the pier when I turned off the engines. I was about to throw her off the boat when a little girl came to the pier calling for her mom. I told Marion to get off my boat. She pulled out a pair of handcuffs and locked herself to a mooring point. Wallace, I know you hate me right now, but she needs your help. Karen will die without a kidney. Please don't hurt her because of what I did. I know you're angry, but you're a bigger person than that. I stared at her for a moment before laughing. Now you have faith in me? I'm a good man when you need something, but not good enough to stay with. Mommy, the child screamed from the dock. It's okay, honey, Marion yelled back. Mommy's fixing things. I felt a dark laugh rise from deep within me and pushed the boat's throttle forward again. Wallace, what are you doing? I'm going to Bermuda. I plan to stop at St. Thomas first. Thanks for keeping me company. I see you packed light. But what about Karen? Who exactly is that, Marion? I don't know a Karen. I never met a Karen. I never got to hold her bike or kiss her goodnight. She's your daughter. Funny, I don't recognize her. Because I remember my kids since I was there to raise them. Granted, not very well if how they turned out is any indication. I guess I'll put that on you. What do you want? At this moment, we had entered the channel and were heading out to the open sea. I noticed that several figures had joined the little girl. Although I was too far away to see clearly, I guessed they were my former family. I waved. Wallace, you need to turn back. I powered on my Android and spent a few minutes booting up the recorder app. Obviously, I hadn't bothered to read the manual for such a trivial task, so it took me a while. Meanwhile, Marion was talking in the background. Wallace! Are you even listening to me? I finally managed to get the device running. Not really. Could you repeat that? Wallace, we need to talk about saving Karen's life. Didn't you see her stagger to the end of the pier? Marion, unlock yourself and get off my boat. Considering we were almost 2 miles from the quay by then, it was more a formality than anything else. She just smiled at me. We can't do that. Jason has the only key, and he's back at the dock. So, you can either go back and help my daughter or... I like or. I passed the point and opened the throttle to full speed. Honestly, I was in a dilemma. On one hand, I really wanted to get the woman off my boat. But I didn't see any need to be guilted and pressured by a group of faithless individuals who had not only abandoned me, but essentially forced me out of their lives completely. If I chopped her hand off, I'd probably get in trouble, and it might stain my deck. Alternatively, I could cut the mooring point free, which would damage the deck. I didn't like either option particularly much, and I certainly didn't think she was worth the $1,500 for a life raft. She continued to talk to me, so I was still reevaluating what my peace and quiet was worth in terms of a lifeboat when my reverie was cut short by the Coast Guard. Being a generally law-abiding person, I stopped. Do I need to mention that they had a chain gun on their bow? They sent a Zodiac raft over full of serious-looking men in uniform. I put the android in my little storage bin in the deckhouse under a few charts. They boarded my ship without asking. "What's going on here?" the person in charge asked. "Thank God you're here," the woman exclaimed. "He's kidnapping me." She shook her handcuffs at them. "Sir, is this true?" "Well, I'm glad you're here too. If we can just figure out a way to get her off my boat, you can take her with you. And no, I didn't kidnap her." "Sir, it would be much easier if you just gave us the keys and explained what's happening." "I don't have the keys. This crazy woman jumped on my boat and handcuffed her. I noticed their skeptical looks and realized how my story sounded. Wordlessly, I turned around and offered my wrists. Do you know how much cuffs sting when they slap them on? Guys who join boarding teams live for this stuff, just like SWAT guys. I think one of them was pretty excited. I was lucky they didn't slam me onto the deck. As a suspected kidnapper, I was a celebrity. I did, however, insist they search me for the keys to prove my point. My humiliation wasn't over for the day, though. The boatswain's mate in charge had one of the men take a screwdriver and release the woman by unscrewing the mooring point from the deck. Why didn't I think of that? She sat there smirking at me. "Now you have to come back." "You're going to regret this," I said. Not original, but I was feeling pretty miserable at the time. There were many questions, but I got a lawyer and was taken into custody. My arraignment was going to happen soon when I received an unexpected visitor. "Look, let's put this all behind us. Just donate your kidney and we can move on with our lives. You'll have done something wonderful, huge, and heroic. My daughter will be alive and maybe we can see this as a bonding moment. I know we treated you pretty badly. Maybe—" Marion licked her lips and squeezed her husband's hand. "Maybe we could invite you over for Christmas." She glanced at him nervously. He nodded condescendingly. It was nice to see that one of my organs suddenly made me something less than a persona non grata. Maybe if I gave them my testicles, they'd invite me for Thanksgiving as well. How about this? We wait until my trial. Know how long that's going to take? No judge on earth will make me give up an organ while I'm incarcerated. Have a really nice night. That is, if I don't just plead guilty to a lesser charge. I wonder if I'll get 7 years. Both of them blanched and started hammering on the glass partition as I turned and walked away. Oddly, I had a lawyer pretty quickly. "Hello, Mr. Banks. I'm Matthew Hughes. I'll be representing you." "Oh, are you a public defender?" "No, Mr. and Mrs. Paxson are paying for my services." "Yes, but are you my attorney or their attorney?" "You raise a thorny issue." "Not really. If you're my attorney, I'd like a notarized letter confirming you represent me. I'm also not accepting your representation unless you're prepaid a very large retainer by those people. I don't want you quitting because they suddenly don't want to finance this." He considered this for a very short time. "That works. It's an awkward situation they've put me in, and this might clear up the ethics handily." Why did I think that the prospect of a large retainer had just as much weight as his ethics? Cynical of me, I know. You'll see the papers tomorrow. The night before I was to be released on bail, and no, I didn't pay a cent, I sat in my cell deeply contemplating who I was and what kind of man I wanted to become. Was I the sort of person who could heartlessly walk away while someone was drowning? I didn't like to think so. However, when it came to my family, ex-family, the hatred seemed to overshadow my morality. Marion was right about that. But similarly, my family had shown they were the kind to abandon someone. I had been drowning, and they all walked away. Well, not literally drowning. I was still breathing, still capable of finding some happiness. Somehow I just hadn't managed it yet. I recognized that as a weak point in my character. They would constantly lecture me about doing the right thing, and I had no defense. Was a relatively harmless medical procedure worth my daughter's life? I quickly stepped back from that thought. No, not my daughter. At best, I was just a donor as far as my connection to her was concerned. For a moment, I considered forcing an interaction. She was technically my blood. I could insist on visitation rights, but I quickly dismissed that idea. Even if I found a judge who agreed, she'd still be living in that toxic environment, and she'd resent me for it. How about rescuing her from that dangerous situation? I could adopt her and take her on world tours with me. It would definitely be in her best interest. I began to consider the practicalities. There's that small cabin next to the master suite. I could clear out some of my keepsakes, and I started thinking about life jackets, cooking for two, and not being able to lounge around in my underwear. What if she fell overboard? She seemed like a curious girl, and what if I got distracted? What about her education? Could I homeschool her on a boat? That would take up a lot of my time I currently spend fishing and doing other things. Then there's the issue of making friends. How would she socialize on a boat? No, the boat would have to go. That would leave me as a single dad with a girl taken away from her family. If someone did that to me, I'd be pretty resentful. I'm not wealthy enough to make up for it like that jerk Marion could. Life on a boat would get old quickly for a little girl. I sighed. I'll need to think this over more. I was leaving with my lawyer when they ambushed me outside the federal holding facility. Wallace, we need to talk. Mr. Hughes left my side and went back into the facility. Talk? I have a federal offense to worry about. I'm not supposed to be anywhere near you, given that I allegedly kidnapped you. The FBI is involved. That's on my record now. She flushed. Jason and Macy were with her. Dad? I told you before you forfeited the right to call me Dad a long time ago. Fine. D. Mr. Banks, Karen's condition is worsening. She's on dialysis. You need to help her now, Jason said. I have to go to court. I have to pay taxes. I might even have to die. Oh, and just so you know, I tore up my organ donor card and amended my will to specify that I should be cremated intact without any organ harvesting, just in case. All three of them looked horrified, but with a hint of guilt. People could be as moral as they wanted, but desperate times made them act desperately. How could you think we'd do something like that? Macy asked. History? You've taken sides before, and I know which side you chose. Marion decided to adopt a serious tone. Look, there's a lot of bad history between us. I treated you poorly. Okay? I'm sorry. I will regret what I did for the rest of my life. But it's done. She hasn't done anything to you. So we all need to act like adults and do what's best for Karen. You know, when someone says, let's all act like adults about this, what they really mean is, please ignore all the awful things I've done to you. She opened her mouth, but I gestured for her to stop. Mr. Hughes had come back with a pair of officers. Madam, I'm afraid I have to arrest you, one of the officers said. What? Why? She looked at me, bewildered. Wallace? What's happening? I believe the formal charge is making a false statement to law enforcement. Maybe they'll allow you to visit Karen occasionally. Mr. Hughes had played a crucial role in getting my evidence to the right people. I needed to shake her up. Jason began yelling at the officers, and it seemed like a physical altercation could erupt at any moment. Fortunately, Macy managed to de-escalate the situation while Mr. Hughes took me to my motel. It was typical of my luck to run into them at the hospital. An attractive nurse was lavishing attention on me, which felt oddly pleasant, given the last 7 years. That infernal mermaid still hadn't made an appearance. "Thank you so much for your kindness," she effused. Macy and Marion stared at me, then their faces lit up with smiles as they began to approach. I flinched and quickly hid behind the nurse. "Mrs. Paxson, Ms. Banks, how are you?" the nurse bubbled. "Mr. Banks," she hesitated. Mr. Banks here has just registered for the kidney donation list." She looked questioningly at my daughter and me. "Are you related, or is this just a coincidence?" "Yes," Macy answered at the same time I said, "No." Macy's smile vanished. The nurse blinked in confusion. "Well, I'll just finish the paperwork," she said awkwardly before hurrying away. "This is such a noble gesture you're making," Marion said, missing the underlying tension. She was a desperate mother, acting out of desperation. "I'll make sure everyone knows what a great man you are." Macy whimpered as she noticed my expression. "Not really. It seems that due to moral pressure, I'll have to donate a kidney whether I want to or not. If I want to look myself in the mirror, I need to save someone's life. And you can. You will." "Why do you think it will be Karen?" I asked bluntly. "What? But you're a match. I'm sure you will be." "Yes, but there could be other matches as well." "But why would you help a stranger?" She suddenly stopped and squinted. "Because strangers might genuinely appreciate it. They might truly value my act of saving a loved one's life, rather than seeing it as a mere obligation due to past actions. It would be poetic justice if another little girl could benefit from my kidney. Personally, I'd rather save a dad, a hard-working, blue-collar dad with a family that cherishes him. I'd prefer to rescue a family like that." Macy covered her mouth and hurried away. "Why are you acting like this? When did you become such a jerk?" "I thought I knew you." "You know what? You cheated on me for 3 years, blindsided me with a divorce, turned my kids against me, and I just walked away. Sure, I was angry, but I walked away. You pulled me back into your life. You keep making your problems my problems. You got me arrested. You gave me up. You separated me from my daughter. So now you don't get to judge who I am and what I've become. Want me to fix things? Fine. Have the Paxson clan show up day after tomorrow at 8 a.m., all of them. If even one person is missing, I'm leaving. Make sure the releases are signed so we can proceed without delay if we reach an agreement." I pulled out an envelope. "Macy has a doctor's appointment today she needs to attend. This is a personal letter." "What games are you playing?" she began. "You'll find out day after tomorrow." I turned and walked away. I sat at the conference table, my stomach growling with hunger. Mr. Hughes was present, sitting next to the notary. I considered recording the meeting on video but decided against it at the last moment, following my lawyer's advice. We had been informed by the district attorney that the charges against Marion and me had been dropped, and we were cautioned not to involve the criminal justice system in our personal issues, which struck me as odd since I was the one who had been wronged. Marion had been duly notified. The group arrived. James Paxson, now in his 40s. I still couldn't understand why he married my wife. Marion, that wretched woman. They sat together holding hands across from me. Mike entered next. I was surprised he wasn't stationed elsewhere. Perhaps he was on emergency family leave. His hair was cut short and neat, fitting for a naval aviator. Jason was also present. Finally, Macy came in last and late, avoiding eye contact with me. "I want to let you know right away that the doctors have found not just one but 2 potential matches for my kidney. One is an excellent match. And the other is also quite good, I said, lying through my teeth. I let the information settle for a moment. The doctors are frustrated with my insistence on choosing who receives the kidney. They believe it should be purely a medical decision. But I'd rather ensure that someone else has at least a good chance. "Why are you being such a jerk, Wallace?" James Paxson asked. "First, you should call me Mr. Banks. I have nothing to say to you right now. You all want me to take a part of myself and give it to a stranger, trying to blackmail me into making a sacrifice. Well, the decision has been made, and someone is getting a kidney. But it doesn't have to be your sister. If you want me to do the right thing and save a life, I am. Since I'm willing to make a sacrifice for a stranger, now it's your turn." "Is this about money?" Paxson inquired. "Money? Just be quiet and let former family talk." I couldn't believe this guy. First of all, I want a divorce. When they looked distressed, I raised my hand. "I don't mean from the woman over there. I mean from all three of you." "What do you mean, divorce?" Mike asked. "Even though there's no formal procedure for this, you are all a huge disappointment to me. You haven't called, written, or done anything until now when you need something again. I could tolerate that before, but now you've pushed me too far, and I want out. There's one last thing I want from all three of you." "What's that?" "My name." "She's a Paxson now," I said, pointing to my ex-wife. "I want all three of you to change your names to something else." Hughes started distributing the forms. "Honestly, I don't care what it is, though I suspect it will still be Paxson. If I may suggest, Jason, I think Arnold would make a fine last name for you." Jason's middle name was Benedict. "If signing this will help Karen get a kidney, I'll gladly do it," Michael said as he began to sign immediately. "You've really turned into a complete jerk, Dad." "Since you're so willing to make sacrifices, why don't you start with yourself? Could everyone else give me and Michael a moment alone?" They left the room, puzzled. Macy placed a hand on Michael's shoulder in a show of sympathy, sensing what was about to unfold. Michael looked at her, bewildered. Once they were alone, he glared at me. "You always taught me to do what's right. I guess it was just empty talk to you." Given how poorly my lessons seemed to have been absorbed, I must have been a terrible teacher. "It's a divorce. It happens. Sometimes tough stuff comes your way and you have to deal with it, tough guy." The military hadn't helped his temper or attitude. "I'm glad you think that way. Bad things do happen, and sometimes they're caused by others. It's good to know that's coming your way. Friends and family support each other. So, how do you reconcile your military teamwork mentality with what happened to me?" "Mom asked us not to." "How convenient. So if an officer asked you to do something immoral, you'd just go along with it?" I opened my bag and took out a vial, a mirror, and a razor. "Let's play don't ask, don't tell." I poured a small amount of white powder onto the mirror and sliced it into lines. "Here. And what do you expect me to do with that? I'm guessing these are banned substances. Assume what you like. It's the price for my kidney." He turned the mirror over, causing its contents to spill onto the gleaming surface. "Screw you. I'm not doing it. I don't believe you'd let her die." "You'd be surprised by what I'm capable of these days," I replied coolly. "And the burden of guilt is on you. See, I am going to save a life. You are choosing not to help your sister, which is your prerogative. I'm not particularly surprised, knowing how much family loyalty means to you. After all, she isn't wealthy and can't offer you anything in return." He looked as if he wanted to leap across the table at me. "Screw you! I love my sister, but I'm not risking my career when I don't have to. Do you know how long I worked to rise from the ranks to flight officer?" "Yes. A third of the time I spent keeping a family and marriage together. Spare me the sob story, tough guy. Just give her the kidney. Why are you making this so damn difficult? Why are you trying to hurt us?" I stared at him as he looked down at the table, now covered in spilled powder. "You know, you're kind of amusing. Here you are, playing the tough fighter pilot. Did you ever think about what that really entails? It means you're expected to get into a jet and risk your life for strangers back home. You're supposed to be willing to die at the command of others. I doubt you considered that aspect of the job. You probably thought it was just about taking out the bad guys, because you can't even make a sacrifice for someone you personally know. It seems it was all about the uniforms and impressing girls, having people tell you how amazing you are. To hell with you. Mom was right when she left you. Maybe. Maybe not. As for me, I'm going to save a life. You, Mr. Tough Fighter Pilot. Now you have to make the difficult decision. You thought it might involve shooting down a plane or starting a war. No, now you have to decide whether a little girl will die when you could make a difference. There won't be any cheering crowds or fellow officers congratulating you or sharing your burden. Just a simple act for someone other than yourself, you selfish bastard. But the family will know. They'll know you had a choice, and you backed out. Because you love your shiny uniform more than you love your sister. Tell me, when you played with her as a child, when she was 2 and just learning to talk, what did she call you? I saw the pain in his eyes. Mickey, she called me Mickey. Just give me the damn poison. I'll do it. He motioned towards the half-empty vial. No, I said, giving him the coldest stare I could manage. Now you can lick it off the table. Jason entered alone as requested, his face showing a deep sense of guardedness. He had noticed Michael when he left. Sit down, I ordered. You know, I'm most disappointed in you. You had a wife and kids when you did this to me. If you really loved them, you should have known better. I paused. You do love them, don't you? It was important not to take that for granted. Yes, he spat out. So you have some idea of how I felt, or at least you should deed. Dad, at my stern look. Mr. Banks, Mom was unhappy. She'd been unhappy for years. I placed the envelope on the table and slid it back and forth between my hands. His eyes followed it. So, were those the years she was seeing James Paxson behind my back, or was it earlier? Do you think she communicated her unhappiness to me? I noticed she was different for a few months, but she never said a word. Wouldn't you want Pamela to tell you if she was unhappy? Or if she didn't have the courage, wouldn't you hope your kids would give you a heads up before you were blindsided? If your wife was seeing someone else while you weren't around, wouldn't you want your son to let you know? What do you want from me? An apology? I said I was sorry. I'm still sorry. Yes, you're sorry. But an apology is just words. I tapped the corner of the envelope with my finger, sending it sliding towards him with a flutter. This is what I want from you. With a sense of unease, he opened the envelope. Inside was a key card bearing the Quality Inn logo. What's this for? It's for a hotel room, room 341. There's a charming young woman in there, free of any diseases, who would like to meet you. In fact, I recommend you get to know her in the biblical sense. I insist on it. And what exactly is the point of this? Why are you messing around with these games instead of just helping people who've wronged me? Once there was a young man married who took care of his father's marriage. It wasn't perfect, but it was something his father valued. Like most marriages, it needed work. We saw how well he tended to that marriage. Now it's my turn to handle yours. If you care about your sister, you'll make sure she stays safe. Even if I'm a complete jerk and sent the video, he twitched. To Pamela, you might still salvage things. You can explain what a colossal pain I am, and how I forced you to be with an incredibly attractive woman. It might not end your marriage, especially if it's built on trust and honesty. Does she trust you? Does she believe in you? You might repair things, but it won't be the same. Just like I'm not the same. Consider this a belated birthday gift. At the last moment, I added, oh, and give me your cell phone. See, I only rented her for 3 hours. Or is rented the right term? Hired, yes, I hired her for 3 hours. And just so you know, since the charges against me have been dropped, I've got my boat back. So, How much do you value your sister's life? I leaned back and let the cursing begin. Once he started to calm down, I checked my watch. You have 2 hours and 25 minutes left. Send Macy in, and don't forget to leave your cell phone. Macy entered, looking like she had been thoroughly defeated. Dad, Mr. Banks, I'm so sorry. I never considered your perspective. You were always the strong one, the one who disciplined us and took the hard hits with resilience. She nearly sobbed. We thought you'd recover quickly, and you seemed to. You started yelling and then vanished, and I thought you hated us. You got that last part right. She winced, but I didn't realize it would hurt. Not this much. It did, and it still does. Do you know what's the worst part of this whole situation? She shook her head. It's that you came back. You came back. Not because you were sorry, not because you missed me, not because you realized you were wrong, but because you had no other choice. She sat there staring at her hands. Is that why you scheduled the appointment for the Escher implant for me? Escher is an irreversible sterilization procedure in which 2 plugs are inserted into the fallopian tubes, resulting in scarring that prevents pregnancy. You've taken my future from me. That's not true, she whispered. Not technically. You've taken a future from me. I'm simply taking a future from you. You'll find someone. You'll experience love. You'll build a career, pursue hobbies, find joy, and make friends. Just no children, she sobbed. Perhaps you'll come to value family more. Maybe Karen could even be like a surrogate daughter to you. She remained silent, still fixated on her hands. That's what this is really about. Sacrifice. The doctor. I was numb when she described the procedure. She mentioned a 3-day waiting period to ensure I was serious. The doctor said I'd need a family member or loved one to drive me home afterward. She then looked up at me, her face devoid of any emotion. A blank mask, where my little girl used to be. I chose you instead. Father, I wish you would take this cup from me, but your will be done, not mine. The bitterness was palpable. Marion confronted me outside the room after Macy had left, looking like a zombie. Are you enjoying ruining your family? She spat out angrily. Excuse me, but I was on a boat heading to Bermuda. I was physically expelled from this family 7 years ago when every single one of you took a side against me. So that makes it okay for you to mistreat your own children? They're not my children anymore. You made sure of that. I must have been a terrible parent if they could turn against me like this. But I'm sure they won't forget this lesson. Not at all. So this is revenge? Call it whatever you like. I suddenly felt exhausted. It had been an incredibly stressful day, and I knew it was only going to get worse. Do you mind? Being a jerk is draining. And it really was. So, is it our turn now? She asked, glaring at me. Sure, let's finish this. Just then, Jimmy walked in with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her, and she blew on it, giving him a smile that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. She had a whole life without me. Mr. Hughes arrived with the notary, placed his folders down, and took a seat beside me. This was my moment. Marion, would you like to hear the difference between you and me? She took a sip of her coffee. I have a soul. Very clever. Still as sharp as ever, though devoid of shame. At least you have a soul. No. I was going to point out that you still hold on to all your cherished memories. You made your choices, had your children, and everything seemed perfect for you. Meanwhile, I was left with the wreckage of our past memories and had to question my relationships with all of you. You had Macy, Jason, and Michael supporting you while I was cast aside. Wallace, how many times do I need to apologize? The last few years of our marriage weren't exactly filled with joy for me either. No? You saved all your joyful moments for Jimmy. You didn't bother to share any of those with me. You just moved from one set of happy memories to another. I could see James wanted to interject, but he simply clenched his jaw. Maybe he was wise to stay silent. It doesn't matter. I can see from our kids' expressions that you're ready to do something terrible. So let's get on with it, shall we? I smiled, though my eyes remained unmoved. James, how's my wife? Having a good time with her? He remained silent, waiting for more. Ever wondered why married people are so attractive to others? If someone has any appeal at all, they become desirable to single people. James, you're a prime example. It's because married people have already had their rough edges smoothed out. People are like stones in that way. I've already shaped Marion, and you chose to take her, James. That's theft. You saw something attractive and decided to claim it. Are you saying you want her back? James asked, clearly taken aback. Oh no. It's like used chewing gum. Once it's been chewed, you don't want it back. Why would I want a faithless and deceitful woman back? Marion's face grew a bit pale at my words, but she remained silent. Keep that in mind for your future. She may not have 25 years left, but in about 14 or so. Just a piece of advice. Been there, done that. Are the insults part of the deal? He asked. No, those are on the house. But back to the main point. You didn't just take my wife. You took my entire life, everything I had, everything I expected. You altered my past, present, and future without even asking. I took the 2 folders from Mr. Hughes. These are quit-claim deeds. One is for your house. You sign it over to me. Hughes cut in. He prepared these in case you wanted to give him a gift. I smiled and nodded. This other one is a quitclaim for all your personal property. What's chattel? Marion asked. Hughes explained. That includes the contents of your house, your boat, and your cars. You're transferring all of it to him. I continued. Your belongings, including the anniversary lingerie you bought, the box of baby clothes, the photo albums, the trophies and diplomas. Marion, your grandmother's cast-iron skillet. Your favorite book. The bed where you shared such intimate moments. The backyard where you hosted gatherings with friends. I want it all. Here's the deal. You sign, we handle the paperwork while you stay here, and you give me the keys to everything. A private investigator will monitor the house, recording to ensure you don't sneak in and take anything. I'm not heartless. You can pack 1 suitcase of clothes for yourself and Karen, plus any essential legal documents like birth certificates and passports. But no marriage licenses. I have plans for that little piece of paper. So this is about money, Paxson scoffed. Did I mention your 401k? Did I ask for your stocks or cash? No. This is about your memories, your life. You took mine, so now I take yours. Marion remained focused throughout this exchange. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out a pen, and asked, Where do I sign? Hughes's assistant had placed sticky notes, and she began to sign and date the document. Wait, James interjected. He can't do this. You can't sell a kidney. It's illegal. This isn't a sale. There are no promises made, Hughes said with a look of disdain. I suspect lawyers sometimes take on morally questionable clients just to feel superior. This is merely a request without any quid pro quo. Consider it restitution for past wrongs. And what if we report this to the police? He blustered. Don't be a fool, Jim, Marion said. If we do that, he won't be able to donate the kidney, or he'll end up in jail, and Karen will die. We've already tried that route. She gave me a look of disdain. This time, it's our turn to suffer. The cost is too steep. We need to negotiate. I'm up for it, I interjected before Marion could continue. What's the going rate for a little girl's life? Just curious. I tapped the file folders with my finger. But I know what my price is. Jim, sign the papers. I've had that house for 15 years. It represents everything I've worked for my entire life. It's just a house. It's all we have. I know. And it hurts. It really does. All the birthday photos, all her clothes, my things, my jewelry. She looked at me, then reached behind her neck, unfastened her gold chain, and slammed it down on the table. Here. She started twisting rings off her fingers. My rings, too. Do you want my wedding rings as well? I waved my hand dismissively. No thanks. I know exactly how much you value such things. She actually growled at me. He grabbed her head and turned it towards him. Marion, listen. He's just playing twisted games. He's not actually going to follow through with this. We can't afford to be weak right now. He's just trying to tear us apart. Thanks for the insight, Captain Obvious, but there's nothing we can do. We can wait and hope he grows a conscience. We can see if we can get another opportunity. We can't just throw everything away because of one. You're not throwing everything away, I cut in. You still have your health, each other, and that oh-so-lucrative job that you used to seduce my wife. Marion blushed in shame and looked away. So you'll be fine. Just, the stuff will be gone. No deal, James yelled at me. You need to propose a different price. Marion, he's bluffing, he screamed. Jim, he was headed to Bermuda. He's driven by hatred and spite. Jim, we can't risk that with our daughter. She's not, he began, but then stopped. A heavy silence followed. I don't know what you're about to say, but don't say it. She spoke with precise enunciation, but her face was anguished. She glared at me with hatred. I hope you're satisfied. I sighed. Yes and no. For years I told myself that you were a heartless opportunist who threw everything away for money and a younger man. That meant that the woman I believed you were was a complete illusion, and I was a fool for 24 years. That you were just pretending. But when you picked up that pen and signed everything away, it reminded me of the woman I married, the one who made the right choices and truly cared for her family. My judgment wasn't entirely wrong. So if a part of that Marion still exists, maybe I'm partly to blame. But just a part. When it came down to it, you didn't give me a chance to fight for my family. It doesn't change the fact that when faced with the choice between material things, my voice dripped with contempt, and family, you made the right choice. The only good choice. But, and you need to live with this, that was a choice you denied me. I didn't want the house, the car, or half of the retirement fund. I wanted my family, and I wasn't allowed to keep them because of you. I glanced at my watch. This has been enlightening, and it looks like you two have a lot to discuss. Unfortunately, your other daughter has her own appointment, so I need to drive her there. Mr. Hughes can handle things for me from here. With those words from James Paxson, my task was complete. The drive was silent as I replayed the entire recent encounter in my mind. Marion wasn't completely worthless. She was willing to go through a lot for her daughter. But what about me? Was I a hate-fueled monster, seeking revenge, trying to teach a lesson, confronting my own demons, or just indulging in my own cruelty? Unfortunately, all 4 explanations seemed to fit, and only 2 of them were in any way flattering. On my way to the doctor's office, my phone beeped with a text. Jason had paid his price. The message also mentioned that he had been crying like a baby. I sighed, thinking back to the days after the divorce. He had 7 years of regret before we were close to even. I steeled myself. The OB/GYN office was typical. Magazines about pregnancy, pictures of mothers with angelic babies, nicely painted walls, and a corner filled with children's toys. Naturally, there were pregnant women present. Macy looked drawn, her eyes darting around the room, searching for a place to focus. Eventually, she closed her eyes and curled up, trying to shut out the world. I could hear her muttering to herself. I'm doing this for Karen. I'm doing this for Karen. I'm doing this for Karen. Her knuckles were clenched white. Memories from the past, ones I'd avoided for 7 years, came flooding back. Macy had a passion for dolls. She played with them until she was 13, then moved on to artistic China dolls in her teenage years. I remember her breakup with Gary Dodson. He seemed like a nice boy, but when I asked her about it, she said, "He's not good with kids." I recall the way she used to light up with that daddy smile. This was going to be incredibly hard for her. "Macy Banks," the receptionist called out. She grabbed my hand, and I swear I felt my bones grinding together in her grip. Her voice was low and urgent. Promise me, you'll do what you said you would. Swear that this will erase all the pain I caused you. Tell me this isn't in vain. Make me believe it. I don't care what anyone else does. Swear to me that this is over, please. Just tell me that I'm a good girl, Daddy." Then she broke down and cried. While this was happening, the receptionist observed and then quickly picked up the phone. I felt conflicted. I reached out and clasped her hand with both of mine. "What is going on here?" shouted a woman in a white doctor's coat. She looked at me, my face pale and my daughter probably looking even worse. I was informed that she had already made this decision. I am not going to operate on this woman in her current state. We're done here until I receive a psychological assessment from a psychologist confirming she is fit for surgery. "Of course, send me the bill," I said with a raspy voice as I helped Macy to her feet. "No!" Macy screamed. "You have to do it. My sister don't ding chior ti xian." "You need to do it," she said, nearly hysterical. I guided her toward the door while the doctor grumbled about calling security. "Daddy, this isn't my fault. I'm sorry. We can find another doctor. I promise I'll do it. But it might take me some..." Shh. I was a shattered man. "You know what's ironic about sacrifice?" I barely managed to say. "Sometimes it's enough just to be willing to face the difficult choice." You paid in full. In the car, she eventually stopped crying. "What now?" she asked dully. "Now I go to the hospital." There was no burst of happiness, no smiles, no joy. I doubt either of us had much emotion left to give. Like an elderly woman, she reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of papers. "Here, these are the forms for changing your name." I completed and filed them before coming to the doctor's office. I don't deserve to be your daughter, and honestly, at this moment, I don't want to be your daughter." I took this in and couldn't falter. "I deeply regret not taking you away from that doctor's office before we were denied service. You have no reason to trust me, but I was wrong." "And yet we still bear the scars," she replied. "Yes, scars. They are reminders of lessons learned. This is your chance to start over. When you have your children, ensure you raise them well. Make sure they don't repeat the mistakes we made. A fresh start. Help your kids to do better than we did." We drove towards the future. I was sitting in a cafe in St. Martin, still waiting for that elusive mermaid who had never appeared in the 10 years I'd been searching. Despite that, I continued to scan the French beach, finding solace in the view. An uninvited young man took a seat across from me, visibly upset. "What can I do for you, son?" I asked gently. "I'm not your son." "No, I remember my boys. They were mostly good men, though they made some serious mistakes, but they paid for them. They learned what's important in the end, and that's all one can hope for." "Would you like a drink?" "No. You're hard to track down." He continued to glare at me, though his eyes began to scrutinize rather than accuse. "So, who's searching for me?" "My name is Harold Weiss." He didn't offer his hand and remained silent. I extended mine. "All right, Mr. Weiss. You obviously know me, though I'm unsure how. How can I assist you?" He hesitated before finally shaking my hand. "I need a significant favor, and only you can grant it." "Mr. Weiss, I've never seen you before. Perhaps you should explain your situation." He sighed and signaled for the waiter, waiting until he received his drink. "This is rather strange. I was expecting someone more what? Hateful. Ah." Time and the Karen incident had helped me shed a fair amount of hate and bitterness. He took a moment to regroup when I didn't respond. "I married Macy Arnold. You might remember her as Macy Banks." I knew her under both names. She showed me the name change documents, though I never thought of her as an Arnold. Macy vanished after I donated the kidney. In fact, I gave it away on the very same day I confronted the family. In the end, Marion pressured James into signing the documents, though it was clear from their expressions that it had been a particularly harsh confrontation. Marion believed Macy went off to harm herself, but I didn't think so. I thought she was just grappling with a lot of personal issues. Yes, I stayed at their house during my recovery. For the first 3 days, a nurse took care of me, and I spent my time prying into the lives of strangers. They appeared happy in the photos, but I wasn't a part of that life. As I started to recover, I went through their belongings. Any photo of Mr. and Mrs. Paxson was placed in their grand fireplace. Any photo of Mr. or Mrs. Paxson, along with Karen, was left as it was. I destroyed any picture of relatives I didn't recognize. All his trophies, diplomas, toys, and her delicate lingerie were reduced to ash and twisted metal. It seems Mr. Paxson had been quite a baseball player in high school. I thought about destroying all of her clothes as well. But 2 things stopped me. First, I remembered my mother, her church dress, her apron, and her visiting suit. They were significant memories for me. Additionally, there was a photo at the bottom of her dresser of the 5 of us at Disney World, from when we were a happy family. I spared those items in memory of my mother and for Karen. The remainder of the month was spent reflecting on the future while drinking their stockpile of wine and a special 25-year-old Laefroig from a wooden box. It was underwhelming. Just scotch. When I needed cash, I sold one of her pieces of jewelry. I wasn't about to use my own money. His clothes, both cars, her remaining jewelry, and some precious heirlooms I knew she cherished were donated to the National Kidney Foundation. I left the donation receipts on the kitchen table. This wasn't about the money. I resolved not to harm a little girl who had done nothing wrong apart from being related to the ones I resented. I saw her swing and noticed a small gap in the bushes where there was a tiny headstone marked Frodo, surrounded by a circle of rocks and a wilted flower. No. I was prepared to destroy this place if it were just Marion and James. It was the only other gesture I could make for a daughter I would never know. I called Hughes and had him reverse the paperwork. Why did I wait a month? I wanted them to put in the effort to set up a new household, deposits, furniture, and appliances. Yes, it was petty, but while Macy and Marion had shown some remorse, James deserved a bit of this. Recovery takes time. Since Marion had proven herself to still be a relatively sensitive person, I left her little notes. I wrote in their photo albums, "She's a beautiful girl. Too bad I never knew her." I also left a few other notes where she might come across them over the years, but overall, I was done with this family. Again. Family illness, moving, a fire. These are all stressful on a marriage. They got hit with all of it at once. Let's see if good old James could keep things together when it was stormy, just as well as he did when it was sunny. I wished him no luck whatsoever. Now, though, I had a young man I'd never seen before asking me for a favor. Mace was in therapy for a long time. He gave me another sharp look. "She's better now. She said you were the hardest son of a bitch on the planet." He paused, expecting a response that never came. Anyway, when we started dating, she wanted to make sure that her husband understood the meaning of sacrifice. He watched me again, but I had no idea what he was talking about. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. She told me from the start that any children we had would be named Banks. That was non-negotiable. "So, have you had any children?" I asked, my throat tight. Greta and Alois Banks. She let me choose their names. Alois is less than a year old. And where do I fit into this? My brother just died and he didn't have any children, even though he was married. I want to continue the family name, but my wife refuses. I think you're the only one who can convince her to change her mind. You're my last hope. As I finished my Carib lager, I pondered over the request. Could you hand me your phone? He passed it to me. Just press number 1. Her cell is connected to that line. I gave him a nod of approval. As expected. I pressed the button. The connection took a moment. Hi, sweetie. How are you? Her voice was warm and affectionate, clearly delighted to hear from him. I recalled when someone felt that way about me. I tried to inject some gruffness into my voice, though it was difficult. It seems you still haven't learned your lessons. A gasp came through the phone. Mr. Banks? What's going on? What lesson? How did you get this phone? Her voice was filled with astonishment. The lesson was about sacrifice and grace. Your young man, your husband, came to confront me about how poorly I treated you. I believe he is a fine young man. It took immense bravery to stand up for you. Family is a two-way street. Can you consider giving him the title to his children? Her tone shifted to a forced, light-hearted manner. You know what? I think I'll keep him. There was a pause. Is there anything else? Yes. My voice was rough, and I felt a release in my chest. I'm sorry, and I would like to see my grandchildren, if you'll allow me. A lengthy silence followed, almost as excruciating as the 7 years of isolation I'd endured. I think Banks is a perfectly good middle name. What do you think? Another pause, slightly less tense. When can you visit? It was as if a burden I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. Macy had, after all, learned about sacrifice and grace. Everyone deserves a second chance. Even me.